evening's panel, Stand Out in the Job Market, Leveraging Liberal Arts Strengths. We are excited to see you here this evening. I love seeing everyone in the chat. Please continue to put your major, where you're coming in from, into the chat today. It's really nice to see it. You may notice that cameras and microphones are turned off so we can focus on the presentation today. However, you are absolutely encouraged to use the chat to engage, network, ask questions, etc. Jen and Hannah will be behind the scenes in the chat today, so if you get stuck, you can @ either one of them, and we'll also have a couple of other SNHU folks in the chat as well. I already mentioned it, but just as an FYI, the session is being recorded. All attendees here today will also be entered automatically into a drawing for SNHU swag for this event. A winner will be selected at random after the session ends, and the winner will be announced in the event chat. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to run through some introductions and housekeeping, and then we will be able to meet the panelists. We'll have the actual panelist session, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to put your Q&A, or excuse me, put your questions in the chat throughout the event, and we'll be sure to get to them if we have the time. For security and legal reasons, please note that participants' use of any AI tool during this event, including Read AI or Otter AI, is prohibited. SNHU is also dedicated to inclusive meeting experiences. If you would like to enable live captions, you can select the 3 dots at the top of the Microsoft Teams window. To expand the More menu, you can then choose Language and Speech from the drop-down and click Show Live Captions. Captions will show on your screen as the presenters are speaking during the session. We are also presenting in PowerPoint Live, which means that you will be able to click on any of the hyperlinks that are live during the presentation, as well as move around the slides at your convenience. PowerPoint Live also provides additional accessibility options. You can select the 3 dots at the bottom of the presentation slides. When you do that, you'll find a magnify slide option. There's a plus sign to zoom in and a minus sign to zoom out. There's also a toggle button to view the slides in high contrast, or there's the option to translate the slide text into a preferred language. These features will only affect your individual experience and not the overall presentation, so feel free to customize and take advantage of these options as you prefer. Individuals with accessibility needs requiring accommodations may reach out to. If you're an online student, it's oac@snhu.edu, or you can call 866-305-9430. If you're a campus student, you can email cac@snhu.edu or call 603-644-3118. If you are SNHU staff or faculty, you can request accommodations through resources in Workday or the source. Please also note that requests for CART or live ASL interpreting requires at least 3 weeks advance notice. I also want to mention that SNHU Career Services is available on a bevy of social media platforms, so please feel free to reach out and connect with the community. You can also access the Career 360 through the link on the screen, which has a bunch of great resources for you to help you navigate through your career journey. With that, we're going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. I would first like to see, I don't know if Peter is in the chat perhaps and maybe hasn't been able to get access yet. So I'm calling out for Peter here.
I don't believe so, Daisy.
Not a problem. We will move on and we'll let Peter introduce himself if he's able to join us later. In the meantime, Greg, I would love if you could come off mic and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. And shout out to everybody that's here today. Future You is going to be so grateful you attended. So I'm Greg, the founder of Milk Room, ecosystem builder based here in Los Angeles, built and exited companies. And I work at the intersection of business, creativity, and community. And Milk Room is something that started as a streetwear brand, and it's evolved into activations, hub for that independent creative. So happy to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you here today, Greg. Thank you. I do want to note that Alicia sends her apologies, but she's not feeling well today and she won't be able to make it to today's event. But I absolutely encourage you to still connect with her on LinkedIn and reach out and speak with her. You can actually click on the LinkedIn icon as well to access her LinkedIn. It's also in the chat. Tom, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Armstrong. I use the he series pronouns. So great to be here. I'm excited to be here, connect with you all. I work at the Museum of Science, where I oversee our internship programs as well as our volunteer programs. And just excited to kind of thought partner and collaborate.
We're excited. Tom, can we hear a bit about the dinosaur in the background of your photo first?
Oh my gosh, yes. So this is Cliff. This is a real Triceratops fossil we have. And I just think it's like the coolest place to get a fun picture.
Absolutely. I think that definitely wins as far as pictures are concerned. Fantastic. Well, thank you both for being here today. Kayla says that she hearts Cliff, and I'm very inclined to agree. What I'm going to go ahead and do is ask a couple of questions of each of you. So I'll just call your name, I'll ask a question, and we will go from there. So let me switch over here. My first question is for Greg. So, Greg, in your perspective, what makes a liberal arts candidate stand out on their resume?
I love this. For me, it's ownership. Like, I don't care what your major is. I care about what you built, led, or improved. So I'm looking at, did you start a club? Did you launch a newsletter, run an event, lead a team project? Because execution stands out more than like that coursework. So show me initiative, not just participation.
I love that. Show me initiative and not just participation. That is fantastic. Great. Tom, how would you say that students should translate their academic experience into the resume and cover letter? So, kind of building off, I guess, what Greg just said, but how would you actually translate those words over?
Yeah, Greg, thank you for starting that off because you got like my number one point. Like, it's not that I don't care what your major is, but it doesn't like it's not your defining characteristic. Your major is important and like I'm happy that you chose it. But it's also about how you communicate it. Like as long as you're able to communicate what you've learned, how it applies, the key phrase that you're always going to hear until the end of time is transferable skills. And so that's really what like the hardest part I think students face is taking kind of like your academic experience, your major, even clubs and, extracurriculars, and finding that way to communicate it into how it's relevant for what you're talking about, what you're applying to, etc.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess actually, I'll just give you the next question as well, because I feel like it ties in really well. So, given all of that, how do you think students maybe could potentially, what mistakes might they make, or how might they miss the mark when it comes to that translation aspect?
Yeah, I mean, first things first is I think like take a step back and look at like how you're communicating. First being like what language are you using? Is it very like industry specific so that I might not understand how it's transferable? Is it clear and easy to understand? This is also going to ping like another question that I know is going to happen in advance, but when you're communicating or applying your materials, if you're communicating and kind of like not hiding the fact that you've used AI, I think that's kind of putting like a poor step forward. I'm pro use AI ethically. I think it's a useful tool. It could be a great thought partner, kind of like send you helpful tips and tricks. And it's about how you apply that. So again, I think the key word for everything this evening is like apply and how to apply. It's taking that extra step to really make it like a pretty package. You used AI to learn. Okay, I was a Spanish major and I focus on Latin American studies. How does that make any sense to a museum job? Well, let's take a step back and think about, okay, AI might have taught me, it's about human connection. Taking a second and realizing like cultural competence, things like that. So that was a ramble. Do what you want with that ramble.
It was a great ramble. I think honestly, taking a step back and taking a deep breath is advice that I personally ignored for many years, and it is so underrated because it solves a lot of problems. So I really appreciate that call out. And I guess actually I will go ahead and skip ahead since Tom, you did ping that question, but I'll pivot and I'll ask Greg. Greg, do you mind explaining or talking a bit about how AI is changing work in your field right now for good, bad, or in between?
It's a part of day to day, right? So like right now, I've got like someone on my team looking at how we're leveraging Clawbot and seeing how we can create roles within our organization that are ran by AI. And so for me, it's really leveraging. And so we're using AI to eliminate that low level task. So think of like the drafting, any type of basic research, or just that repetitive analysis. So that liberal arts student, I need them because that critical thinking, the judgment, taste, and strategy that's added to AI is really where the magic's at. So it's a needed force here within my organization.
Yeah, I love that. We talk a lot about the people work here at SNHU. So the people work will always be people, but if we can take time off the people's plates with some AI tasks, then maybe there's some good in that. So I definitely appreciate that perspective. Tom, I'd like to go back to you, just considering that you are with the museum, and I recognize the irony a little bit that it's the Museum of Science here at a liberal arts panel. So can you speak a little bit to how liberal arts professionals, how you see them contribute and engage in a team setting alongside someone who is maybe in STEM or a science program or something like that?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Let me preface with what I think is important to note. I work at the Museum of Science, and I have failed every single science class I've ever taken. I've tried. I really have tried, folks. It just does not work. Math, science, and me are not friends, and that is okay. That is not going to define me. And look, I can still participate by supporting those who are actively like creating science and technology and engineering and mathematics. Um, you know, liberal arts is all about that interdisciplinary approach. It's all about that strategic and critical thinking. How let's say that I was a Spanish major and I'm going to go work in public health. How am I going to apply what I've learned about, the Spanish language and Latin America to trends we see in public health and, determinants of social health? So, when it applies to the Museum of Science, I think what makes up the museum? And honestly, a large percentage of it aren't people who are actively educating in the categories of STEM. We have our HR folks, advancement, donorship, finance, IT, graphic design, digital, social media. We have all these departments, all these people who are coming from all different backgrounds, who are assisting with the creation of these education materials where we believe in the lifelong love of science. And so I just think, it's that critical thinking component. How am I taking my previous degrees, my previous experiences, whether it's in extracurriculars or just everyday personal life, and applying it to the work I'm doing? How am I creating accessible experiences for our visitors? And while I may not be doing that personally, I'm now focusing on how am I creating accessible opportunities for my employees and my interns, who are then going to be the ones revolutionizing museum spaces. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that did. And I love that concept. That's something that I've thought about before. Just the idea of even if my role is to make the space for the magic to happen, I've still been a part of the magic, basically. And that there's a lot of power in that. And having the confidence to explain that on a resume or in an interview, I think is a really great key skill. So that great answer.
Thanks.
Yeah. Greg, I would actually love to ask you the same. Do you see people who are in like business or STEM fields? How do you see them, or hang on, let me ask that in a complete sentence. How do you see liberal arts students working alongside and contributing in similar ways as a STEM or a business person?
So I'm gonna put on my venture capitalist hat, and like great teams need both, right? So I need that liberal arts student to translate it, like help me shape that narrative, like help me understand user behavior, raise those ethical questions, help my teams align, right? So STEM builds what's possible, but liberal arts really helps define like what part of that is meaningful. So I feel like great teams need both.
Absolutely. Honestly, I feel like, okay, everyone, go home. We've wrapped it up. No, not really. But I think you both have the idea of it that like you need both, and I love the idea too of asking the hard questions, asking the ethical questions. I have a liberal arts background, and my team will vouch for the fact that I'm always willing to ask the question. And again, there's a lot of power in that. So I love that. Perfect. Let me see here. So Tom, I know that we haven't talked about it too much, but you do have a large, actually, I think a huge part in the internship and volunteer program at the Museum of Science. So when it comes to seeing liberal arts candidates as they interview, and let's say they're doing a really, really great job, what is it that they're doing that makes them stand out against someone else?
Yeah, I like to think of like the complete package. For example, let's take a look at like maybe it's like Christmas and your decor all has a theme and your presents, the wrapping paper matches the theme that you've decorated your house. And then there's like bows and gifts and everything all kind of ties together to a cohesive experience. That's what makes people successful. That's what I notice is a candidate who like kind of knows their brand, knows their identity and what they're kind of like selling to me as the hiring manager. The resume, I don't ask for a cover letter, but if they send one, great. If the resume, cover letter, all are in the same format and they're all using the similar language, and I go to their LinkedIn and it's all like a tailored experience that tells a story, for me is kind of like the greatest selling point. In our internship application, we ask a series of questions, kind of like essay based, no more than 200 words, because again, I'm not trying to read too much. Um, that kind of helps us get to know candidates. And for me, the successful candidates are the ones who tell me a little bit about themselves. They answer the question, and then they take what they've learned in their in their examples, in their experiences, and tell me how they're going to apply that to the internship. That's like the big like selling point. It's like being holistic, taking it all the way full circle. You might hear about it called the STAR format of interviewing. I like to consider it as the STAR format for applying to jobs or just writing. It's taking your situation, the tasks, the actions you took, what was the result? And then I like to think of this additional and how does that relate? How does that apply? You kind of like walk me through this lovely experience. And so for me, it's that person who kind of knows what they're selling, and how to sell it.
And you said the word apply again, being able to apply what you've learned into what you can do, basically. So I'm definitely noticing that as a keyword.
Yeah.
Greg, I'd love to ask you the same question. I mean, you own this business, so what does it look like when someone who is a liberal arts has a liberal arts background and they're interviewing as a candidate and they're doing a great job? What makes them stand out from another candidate?
They're telling me clear stories. Like liberal arts students are such great storytellers. They're asking me thoughtful questions. So great candidates aren't just answering questions, but they're also demonstrating how they think. And so to be able to flex that opportunity within that interview process to me really stands out.
I love that. So you said they're showing how they think. Can you expand on that at all?
So, in one case, so like I have this one creative writing internship right now. And so I'm encouraging people to bring a story or a series to life. And so my first interview question to them, when I ask them to schedule time to interview with me, I'm asking them like, what type of story or series would you want to bring to life? And so even if we move forward with that story or series, it really lets me know like their ability to story tell and how they get to connect their experiences to my company's mission.
That's great. That's a great example. Thank you. And Tom, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, one other thing came to mind. I also want to I want to be able to see that you care. I want to be able to tell that you care. There's no denying y'all that the job market is just not cute right now. It hasn't been for a while. When I got the job at the Museum of Science, I think it was after 85 job applications. And that's just been my norm for the last two jobs I've had. Yeah, so it's rough out there, and I get it. At the same time, as we are like bulk applying to jobs, folks, carve out the time for self-care for yourself. That way you are always putting yourself into the like best image of yourself. You don't want to just start sending out lazy applications because that's going to reflect poorly on you. And I want to see how much you care. So take that time to take care of yourself. That way you can then show how much you care to these, organizations and job interviewers.
I love that. And that goes back to, I think you said before, take a step back, take a deep breath, figure it out. It'll be okay. That's awesome. So pivoting a little bit, both of you mentioned things like activities, initiative, clubs, leadership opportunities, and the like. So let me actually start with you, Tom. What academic or extracurricular, that's a hard word for me, extracurricular experiences signal leadership and organizational skills? So basically just expand on what you were talking about earlier too.
Yeah, I don't know for me specifically if there are specific things. Obviously there's going to be like human bias involved. And having been involved in fraternity and sorority life, I get excited when I see that, but you always have to check yourself as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, anyone reviewing job applications, that I'm not going to let that be my deciding factor. For me, I just want to see something. I want to see that you've done something, not just gone to school. Like at this, it's like 2026. I don't know if anyone's just going to school anymore. Like everyone's got like 3 or 4 jobs, or they're doing this on campus, or they're, involved in church or temple. There's something you do, and I want to see that. Again, like how do you apply that to your resume? You just research it. You could do it. But yeah, I just want to see that you're doing something. That in itself will help me just understand you. There's a bunch of different types of like leadership out there, and so I can't say that one is going to be like the type of leadership I want to see. But leadership in its totality is like you taking the um taking the initiative to go out there and do something else besides just, one thing. Do your studies, that's important. Please, everyone, do your homework. But at the same time, go out there and do something, have fun. Um, that's my ramble. Thank you.
I really appreciate that, like doing something, because you said doing something that's fun. So I wonder then too, as a follow-up question, is it enough, and I don't like the word enough in this instance, but we'll go with it. Is it enough that if you see that someone is a member of a couple of clubs that they are engaged with and they relate it to their major? Or would it be better if they were a leadership in one of those clubs? Like what's the line basically?
There's no line. Keyword, it's about how you apply. There could be considerable red flags if I look at a resume and you have your college education on there, then you have a job that you do, and then you have for some reason 2 pages of extracurriculars. Yeah, I'm a little worried. One, like how are you doing that? Two, y'all are in school, you shouldn't have 2-page resumes. But again, have that master resume off to the side of everything you do. I was an overly involved college student where I think I had like 10 clubs I was actively involved in. No, I did not sleep. But I didn't put everything on my resume. Depending on the job I was applying for, I thought about what were those skills, what were those competencies that were important to that role. And then I pulled from my master resume the different experiences I had, whether it was starting a club on campus or just actively participating in this one. So I think, again, like you mentioned, like the word enough, I don't think that word needs to exist anymore. Like you in itself, in your totality, are enough. And it's about how you're communicating that.
Would you say it's about how you're applying your skills in life to your resume?
Wow. Wow. Look at that.
I know. Very full circle here. Greg, I'd like to ask you the same question though. When it comes to a resume and you're looking at extracurriculars, is there anything that stands out, or maybe to Tom's point, is it a bit of a red flag?
Well, so leadership goes beyond a title, right? It's like a responsibility where I've got to see results and that you are accountable. And so that could be something as small as like leading a group project or managing an event. I mean, I recently hired somebody and they ran a publication and they were part of their student government on a small scale, but they were still doing it, right? Or if you're coordinating volunteers. So I just want to see leadership in action.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess too, it's a part of that holistic person that we've been talking about as well, just getting to know them and seeing how they'll do at the organization. Fantastic. Tom, I do want to go back just quickly. We have a question in the chat. Can you expand a little bit on the concept of a master resume?
Sure can. Again, super useful tool for the people who've just done a lot in life. I'm like, what is it called? A jack of all trades and a master of none. That is how
Yes.
I feel. And I'm okay with that because I like kind of like dipping my toes in all the different waters. And so having a resume, again, find the format that is most appropriate, please, and then build your resume in its totality. List every notable experience, every employment. It's basically like LinkedIn, but on a Word document. Every club, extracurricular, publication, research, anything you could imagine that should belong on a resume, throw it on there. That is your living document of all your experiences. Now, as you apply to jobs, take a second, look at the job. Again, we're all liberal arts students, so we can, deduce what is this job? What are the competencies that this role is looking for? And if you are struggling, if you are burnt out because you've applied to 85 jobs, it is okay to leverage AI. Throw it into AI, ask what those like career competencies are for this role, and then think about what was on my master resume and throwing it right back onto a individualized resume. That's just copy and pasting, so it's not a lot of work. But then putting that together for that organization.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love that. And I think the key thing too is still customizing it for the organization, even though you've done, I'd say, over half of the work by having the master resume already.
exactly. And then I did see a question in there related. Should people use a master resume if applying for a different role within the organization? I would have my master resume. And again, if the jobs are similar, feel free to keep the same resume you've applied to already job one. If job two is different, I would tailor resume number two. And then go as far to email their careers at mos.org and let them know that, the recruiter might see two different resumes. That is because I have a master document. Again, that's like what a special little touch you just did there by notifying me as the recruiter who goes through several resumes, several thousand resumes. Yes, I'm going to see your name again, and the resumes are different, not because I'm lying or trying to add some fluff, but because I took the time to tailor. I think, like that to me, that's a chef kiss moment.
Love that. Thank you. I actually hadn't heard of a master resume before, so I'm very intrigued. So while we're talking about resumes, Greg, I would love to, again, considering Milkroom and the industry that you're in and just how exciting that is. When it comes to resumes or portfolios, maybe even like personal sites, project templates and the like, or project samples, excuse me, how strongly do you consider those, especially when it comes to liberal arts candidates?
I almost prefer start by looking at the ones that include a portfolio link. Like that puts them like 80% ahead of other candidates because for me, it's like proof is going to beat claims. And so, especially for you liberal arts students, it's going to show me how you think, it's going to show me how you communicate and how you structure ideas. So, even, writing samples, case studies, or a snapshot of projects that you've worked on will go a long way.
I love that. Do you have a preference when it comes to the a website that's used or a format that's used, or is a portfolio a portfolio?
Portfolio is a portfolio. So I enjoy the ones that are sent to me as PDFs,
Mhm.
where I'm not clicking a link, I'm not having to enter my email address, and it's a simple one-page snapshot too. Because
Sure.
I'll ask more info if I need more details. But it's a one-page snapshot of who you are and what's important to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do have to, I'll plug shamelessly that we do have a portfolio event tomorrow. So if you are in attendance at this event, I encourage you to register for that event and we'll be going a little bit more in depth with portfolios. So shameless plug there. Thank you. Tom, do you have anything that you'd want to add about the portfolio question? I really don't know how much you would consider portfolios, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a portfolio for me is dependent on the role you're applying for. When I'm looking at graphic design interns, let's say, yeah, I want to see your portfolio. I want to
Mhm.
see what you're producing and putting out there. Also, just in general, I am so nosy. Maybe that's because like that's just who I am and I will make the time to be nosy. I'm gonna click a link. Um, no, I've never like fell into phishing, so I am using my critical thinking skills. Um, but yeah, super nosy, am clicking portfolios. I'll also just share the anecdote that sometimes, like when I was applying for a job, I did not share my portfolio first. I'm super passionate about like building your own brand and putting that into the job market. And so for me, my portfolio super tailored to the organization, Museum of Science, that I applied to.
Mhm.
And I printed it out day of interviews and gave each interviewer my portfolio for them to look at after the interview. It's on their desk. They're going to come back to that and they're going to look at it and remember me. And that just went over exceptionally well.
Like the like the chocolate mints that restaurants give you at the end of the meal, it's the exact same thing. Like you'll remember
Exactly.
that though. I'm being flippant, but I'm also not. So I mean they'll remember that. So that's absolutely a great suggestion there. So sticking with resumes, a question for either of you, both of you, whoever wants to go first. What kind of common resume mistakes or interview mistakes do you see that would hurt candidates, especially a liberal arts candidate?
Gosh, I wish I could like share my screen or like I don't even have time to like search it up. But there's like a specific resume format that I literally hate with like all my passion, and it's just because it's hard to read. So first, like I'll prompt you all to just like quick go on TikTok at some point and look up recruiter resume eye tracker. There's a great TikTok that shows you it tracks a recruiter's eyes on like how they scan resumes, and that'll show you like where you should be putting the most important information. All in all to say is I want a resume that just reads top down. I don't want information on this side and then like skills and education hidden over here. If my eyes have to bop around, I'm losing time. I have 500 resumes to look at for one internship, and I've got 25 internships. I don't have time to try to find the information. It's your role as your candidate, as the candidate, to make your information easily accessible and easy to read. So again, one simple document, try not to cram all the information in there. And if there's like key indicators you've used AI, I'm probably tossing the resume because it showed me you didn't read it over, you didn't try to tailor it. Again, fine if you're going to use AI to kind of help translate and communicate some of your skills and qualifications or just reword a sentence that was too long and you need it shortened. But I don't really need to see like some words boldened and weird spaces below that. So just like be mindful of those things.
Awesome. Greg, anything to add?
Making sure that the visual matches the messaging. I will Google you. And if on your resume, if on your Instagram profile, it's like slacker that, is looking to spend the rest of his life traveling the world. If my job description doesn't meet that, like there's going to be something, right? So people are going to Google you. So be ready for that. So make sure that the header on your LinkedIn makes sense, that it's, speaking to the job that you want to get and not who you were. And so just making sure that the visual matches the messaging, because as an employer, I will Google you before I even set up an interview.
Absolutely, Tom. I'll let you go, but I will double down on the Googling yourself. It is something you should do. Absolutely, I recommend it. Leave the session and Google yourself and double check what's out there. But Tom, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I'll also just say keep in mind that a resume is supposed to be professional. One, I don't want to see a picture of you on that, because that just allows people to try to discriminate against you, and like I wouldn't recommend that. But two, like, okay, folks, like last month, I've seen a resume that said that they were a dog dad and wine lover, and I was so confused on why that was on a professional work resume. Like that's save it for like the Tinder bios. This is just like not the appropriate avenue. I think there's a fine way you could bring those up in an interview. People are gonna ask, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me you're a dog dad. Love that. Tell me that you just started this really fun sommelier class and you are learning about wine. There's like professional ways you can be talking about these things, but please do not put that on a resume. And I did just see it. So,
Absolutely. That is certainly a choice. Um, I do want to call out, someone in the chat had an interesting question while we're talking about portfolios, and it was related to the fact that if someone is a published author with a website and work that you're going to find, I presumably whenever you Google them anyway, should they still include that in their portfolio? Thoughts?
I would find it helpful, especially if you want to highlight that. Like, don't assume that I'm going to go out there and find it. If it's something that you're proud of, put it in my face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, echoing that, don't make me work to find information on you. Again, like Greg mentioned, I'm nosy. I'm probably looking you up on LinkedIn and clicking links. But I don't want to have to start like going out of my way to try to find you. That's uncomfortable. But like throw the information in my face.
Yeah, I think it goes back to just that brand awareness and being able to market yourself needs to be put out there if you're going to do that, if you're going to market yourself that way. Greg?
I have one thing to add to that. Go register your first and last name.com. So like I registered my first and last name.com just so I can have hello at my first and last name.com, right? And so be mindful of where the email is coming from as well. So start building the brand that you are. And like if you register your first and last name.com, like it could be like where who you're trying to target when they Google you, like be your own SEO wizard is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's really interesting. Food for thought. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm going to start hitting on some questions that have been asked in the chat. So we'll just kind of go down a list that I've got going on here. Let's see. Greg, I think earlier on you mentioned the term taste as a skill that you really value in liberal arts students. Can you elaborate on what taste is in this context and how you look for it with an applicant?
So something about like a liberal arts student, right? It's like they're showing up and they're talking to me about how we're gonna save the world. And like I love that. And so to me, like I leverage open dialogue with my teams, and people are open to share ideas and discuss how they feel and think because in fashion, taste really dictates like what you're gonna look like as a business, right? So call it taste, call it a vibe. We all carry it within us.
Gosh, you guys are just dropping like t-shirt quotes after t-shirt quote. I love that. We all carry taste within us. That's amazing. Ooh, love that. Awesome. So I'll ask this to both of you again. Tom, I might pick on you first if you don't mind, but if you are looking at a resume, I kind of love this question. Honestly, what is the number one reason that you would toss a resume before you even read the resume?
Your photos on it. There's a lot of color. Probably those two things. Again, my industry is not very colorful. I can't speak on other industries. Like maybe your picture is appropriate for like theater and acting. Like, yeah, that would make sense. Maybe like color is super important for arts industries, but for the one I'm in, it's pretty black and white. We don't need those things, and I'm absolutely like that's a no-go for me.
But I think that goes back to the application part, right? Like if you are maybe museum isn't the part to have the color, but another role that you're also applying for, you can maybe tailor and have a bit more of a colorful resume in that sense.
Right.
Awesome. Greg, what do you think?
They tend to undersell themselves. So they describe tasks and not the value that it brought, right? So something along the lines of like participated in group discussion, when the reality is like, no, you facilitated cross-functional debate. And so I want you to own your work and frame it professionally.
Yeah, that's a great point. Love that. And oh goodness, that's what it was. I'm sorry. I had to pivot there. Greg, you were talking earlier about registering your first and last name as a website. So Caitlin has just asked, what about marketing yourself with a company name as opposed to yourself as a person? Are there differences? Would you still recommend the registration?
So my mom cuts hair, and like she's always cut hair and she will forever cut hair. And I'm like, I want to be doing multiple things. Like I want to be known for this and for that and for that. And so I saw the value in me registering my first and last name to showcase the different companies I've operated, to showcase my different work. And so people are going to do business with you because of you to start. And then we grow it into a business. So do both, but just know that like you continue to be you and you are this business's value proposition. So
And that goes right back to the branding your company, branding yourself as a person, building the brand. Love that. So another question that came through is asking if either of you have any advice for someone who has a degree but no prior job experience in the specific field that they're interested in. So they mentioned that they're having a hard time tailoring the resume because they're making this career pivot, and they graphic design is the degree in question, but they are curious about how to make that pivot.
So the participant in Teams right now, correct me if I'm wrong, their employment was in payroll right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think like first of all, the work you were doing, especially with payroll, like you can't mess around with people's money. And so there is no denying that you probably are just like operationally extremely efficient. And I think those are like the key selling points is how efficient and successful you are in your role. Um, managing timelines, project management, but pivoting from that, like you have an incredible transferable skills that you need to dive into. At the same time, you do need some work experience, and it's unfortunate. Switching industries, you do have to hustle a little bit. And so I would encourage you to even pick up one side project, one client to kind of like hone that graphic design portfolio for. So it's not just the work you had in, university, it's, a professional job you had. Again, just find one.
Interesting, because I wonder if it would be both easier and harder to pivot into something so creative that needs so much body of work, because it's easy to make it, but then you have to have it to make the pivot. Would that sound accurate?
I feel like I almost need you to say that again.
No, you're fine. I don't know if I said it very well, but I'm thinking specifically with graphic design. It's just interesting because you kind of have to have a body of work in graphic design to show that you have the experience. And it's easy enough to make that body of work, but you have to have the body of work. So it's maybe a clear path, but a big challenge. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, but at the same time, if it's what you want and it's like your dream and your passion, that'll fuel you,
Hmm.
just like channel that energy. It's gonna be a lot of work. You might need to put more materials together, but if it's what you want, like do it, own it, surround yourself by around a community that is gonna be your cheerleader. Like I'm freaking excited. I'm like over here so pumped to see what you do. So connect with me on LinkedIn because I'll be your cheerleader. I think that's so exciting.
Love that. Someone else asked a question about resumes, and I'd like to ask this to both of you because I suspect you might have different answers, although I don't know. Tom, you've kind of referenced that your preference perhaps for resumes would be a page, and I think maybe because you are in more of that internship space. Does that sound correct?
I would go as far to say until you're a mid to high level professional, I would keep it one page. This is my second full-time career. Um, I would still keep it at one page where at the level I am at.
Hmm.
I'm not sure where that pivot changes, but I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, same question. Do you have a preference on resume length?
um being that it's a creative heavy world, like for me, some of my favorite resumes is they've mocked up a conceptual design of one of our t-shirts and they sent it over to me and included with their resume. And so that was them being very intentional with who they were applying with. And so, I got them in the door, right? Because it showed me that that like they understood who I am. And so something that I recommend is like, especially in graphic design, we can't be everything to everybody. So create a niche around who is it that you're going to solve the most intense pain point for. Because for all you know, there's enough nonprofits in your community for you to stay busy, right? And so find a niche and own it. And any opportunity you have to take any type of entrepreneurship classes on campus, please do so, because at the end of the day, a graphic designer is an entrepreneur.
You just said something that I almost did a double take at. Let's see if I can do it. You can't be everything to everyone, so you should try and find who you can solve the biggest pain point for. I paraphrased, but does that sound right?
You nailed it. That's it, right? Because
That
I
t-shirt.
can't mean everything to everyone, not initially, right? And so for me to find a lane, like hair salons, like go talk to 10 hair salons. Like there's a niche out there that needs graphic design. So
It gets me excited too because it starts to tie into growing up your community, building in a way your community's brand is in addition to your brand. A lot of really interesting conversations intersect right there. So I really love that perspective. I'm going to pivot again slightly. We asked students for questions whenever they registered, and there was a large group of questions coming in about remote work as well as the job application process and networking and the like. So it's kind of a big question, but in general, what would either one of you recommend when it comes to helping students navigate the job market today, especially as it comes to remote work as a liberal arts major? I know it's a big question.
know your customer, right? So most of these companies that are out there employing remote work that are paying well are going to be startups. And so for me to get an understanding of the lingo, for me to get an understanding of how messages are translated from one update to the next are going to be really important. And so I just want to familiarize myself with the lingo of the industries that are providing these types of remote opportunities. And so what I've seen, it's a lot of startups that are doing that. So think of like content strategy, community management, partnerships, right? So anywhere that people communicate, a liberal arts major belongs there.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add to that.
Well, he wrapped up with another T-shirt. Anywhere that people communicate, a liberal arts major belongs there. So I'm telling you guys, there's a side hustle here with T-shirt quotes based off just the two of you. So there's my plug for the day. We've got a question that came in that I find really interesting, and I think this relates a lot to kind of imposter syndrome and the like. So I would love if we could talk about this briefly. But how do you build on skills when it feels like you haven't learned enough already? So this person mentions, maybe they're not insecure, but they're not sure if they're prepared yet, and they're almost done with a degree. So they're just kind of, trying to explore that. I know I've always talked about imposter syndrome as well. So, any thoughts to share on those topics?
I say don't defend it. Like show me, right? Show me how you think. Show me how you communicate. Show me how you solve problems, right? So the degree isn't the value, it's your capability, and capability compounds, right? So a philosophy major who ran a 5-person student team or organized a camping event for 300 people stands out more than someone who just did the coursework.
Yeah, I think adding on that, I mean, if you have the means, like I did not feel prepared to graduate when I graduated college. I was actually on track to graduate early, so I like seriously did not feel prepared. I was like, 3 years and I gotta enter that job market? I don't think so. So I did add a minor. I found a minor that I found interesting and I added it. And then I got more involved on campus, and that helped build my confidence. Really, the biggest thing to fight imposter syndrome is confidence. So whether it's meeting with the career center, you know, going on Psychology Today and finding a life coach, a therapist, finding anyone to help just kind of like build up that confidence, I think is the biggest thing. Again, I keep saying the word competencies too. Hone in on different competency areas, whether it's communication, time management, really any skill. And think like if you don't feel like you could kind of brag about an experience where you flex that skill, um, take a step back and think, where can I find the experience to throw myself into? You know, I won't lie that for me, it was anything with financial literacy. I was financially illiterate. Like I can't deny it. I have dyscalculia. Numbers just don't clack. Don't see. Now I can't even talk. Numbers and me are just like not friends. And so I took the time to take courses. I talked about how I'm constantly challenging myself to build budgets, and that shows that initiative.
What's that phrase? Bravery is doing the job. You're just going to do it scared, and it's the same difference. That's horribly paraphrased, but I think it's the same idea. Just to go out there, put yourself out there, build the confidence, and then you're able to turn around and apply that confidence as well. So, love
Throw that on a tote.
There we go. I mean, hey, I will say that my proudest accomplishment in my entire time as a student at SNHU was the A- that I got in my math class, because I fought tooth and nail for that, and I don't use it, but it's easily my proudest accomplishment. So I fully understand what you're saying. Love that. I want to ask just like a last wrap up question. If you guys could put a bow on it, what would be your number one piece of advice for how a liberal arts student could stand out in the job search and application and interview process? That's a big question, so I'll give you a minute to think on it. But one piece of advice and a nice, pretty bow.
Yeah, I'll give this a shot, Tom. So for me, it's build something before you graduate, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and don't wait for permission.
For me, I think it's build that confidence. You need to like catch you need to capture someone by your vibe, by, you know, the energy you put into a resume, into an email, into an interview, and it comes from that confidence and the care. And so whatever you put out there, be confident in what you put out there. You know, there's a quote from The Office, where it's St. Patrick's Day and everyone was kind of ready to leave the office early that day to go celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Um, and the CEO's there and she's not letting anyone go. And, you know, Michael Scott goes, you know what? We're all leaving early because I am proud of the work that we've done here today. And the CEO says, as long as you are proud of, like, you could stamp your name on the work you've done, then that's fine by her. And so I think like I kind of lead by that all the time. If I'm proud of the work I've done today, that the work I'm putting forward, then that is what it is. You're gonna face rejections out there. It's gonna happen. But I'm still proud of what I've put forward.
Love that. Both great ways to wrap up, and I appreciate that. I do want to let everyone know, again, I will remind everyone to please connect with our panelists tonight or today. They gave their time, and we're very grateful for that, and I appreciate both of you very much. So we have shared their LinkedIns in the chat. Jen or Hannah, if we could drop those in again just really quick and make sure that we are good to go. I do also want to briefly share with everyone one final bit of housekeeping, if you guys will give me just a second. Perfect. We want to know how we did today. We really appreciate you all for attending. And again, a big thanks to our panelists as well. So before we sign off, I would really encourage everyone to please click the link in the survey. No, sorry, click the survey link in the presentation. We will also, again, drop that link in the chat. It should be pretty quick, and we would really appreciate the feedback. Again, as a reminder, the recording of the event will be available on YouTube within the next 24 to 48 hours. But I think that has been our evening. Again, Tom, Greg, we appreciate the time. Thank you both very much. I learned a ton today, and I hope everyone has a fantastic evening. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.